Good afternoon, good evening, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Data. We're here talking about unified customer views, and we're on part 5 with Klemen and Casey. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Happy to be back all together again.
Yeah.
Indeed. So how should we fill in?
Yeah. What did you?
How should we fill in Casey from last week, Klemen?
For me, the main takeaway was validate what you're setting up is available to the ones who should receive that information in whatever shape and form.
So the validation comes from the people receiving the information. So the end user.
Yeah. Do they see the unified customer view you just designed? Do they see the same or the right properties, the right cards, the right things? If they don't receive that served in the right way, there's no point of filling it up.
Yeah, and it reminded me of some situations in the past where it's like people can make some assumptions about how users are or are not using the CRM after some big project gets done, or hearing certain people talk about it and other people not. And then you don't realize that that person has different permissions, or they execute the process, especially in HubSpot. Like, they might start from a contact record instead of the deal index screen, and all of a sudden that changes the flow, changes the views that they might have, and they might be willing participants of filling in the data or making sure things work. But if they can't see it, it's really hard for them to participate. So yeah, confirming that it's working technically, and for user success. And I also I like to differentiate and call on the importance of who owns the process and who owns CRMs or any tech. This is the difference between IT owning the tech stack in terms of their job is to make sure it's working in terms of break fix, right? And most of the time they don't have the jurisdiction or the experience or the training or even the remit to say, hey, Klemen, data is flowing, but is this actually working for you? Is this helping? Nah, I put it in there just because that's how I get to closed one. But it's really annoying. Every time I got to put that field in that we never hear about in reports, and right. And so that brings us back to part 1, where deciding who's going to own this, right, is so important. Who's in charge of success for the users of a system like HubSpot is super important. So that we can get to this part, which I think we always have stories about, oh man, we got them yesterday, the engineer or the person who's never using HubSpot, they asked, oh, could we build this in HubSpot too? And at that point, that they're bought in, and it can be hard to, I think standardize, or it has been hard for me to explain how to get to that moment, effectively, instead of just hoping, that it's going to happen across teams and across different users. But I'm seeing it more and more when you start to unify like all the context together, people naturally get insights. And so when we go through these multiplication indicators, and I'm open to a different phrase that describes what we're talking about here, but we're really trying to um, confirm that we have adoption by understanding what to look for beyond, like, yeah, I go in there and I close my deals, like, because that's how I get compensated. Like, moving from there to, yeah, I do that because at the end of the month, I'm able to pull an awesome report and then coach myself about how, like, to do deal closing better, stuff like that. Or we look at closed ones, we looked at close lost, and we actually understand that as a team, and then use that insight to then like add layers of value like into the process. Um, so when you think about this concept, like what what comes to mind?
To me, two words. One is unlock, and the other one is enablement. More than multiplication. Because I think it's really enabling users do what they couldn't or didn't know that they could do. And I agree with you. This is when the adoption is way easier, because then they see the point of using the system, of bringing context in. You go from the discussions of, CRM is not helping me, it just takes more time from my day to manage it because I need to for the reporting or to log how many emails I sent or how many calls I made, to, hey, it makes sense to bring all that context in because of this and this and that.
Yeah, I think enablement, also alignment is something I'm like thinking about while I look at this. And even like under that Y multiplication, though, without unified group views, work happens in silos. And this is a little bit just based on the type of work I do, but that alignment piece feels like what I hear the most pain over, and what I work towards solving most of the time. Somebody knows something that no one else knows.
Yeah, I think this with unified view, this is the part that's so hard to explain. Everybody's going to want, like, we're going to go through the gains further down the page, but everybody wants to jump to those gains and talk about like how those are going to be outcomes we're shooting for, without really understanding the intangible part of what's described in the unified view here. Like full context everywhere, right? Like no gray areas to get misunderstood or miscommunicate or not appreciate the context that is missing or be worried about it or all this stuff that comes up, right? In this coordination, the automatic coordination that happens, like because we all see the same thing and trust the same thing, like guess what's happening at meetings now? Like, and that's where the multiplication happens. Like you can come together without having to spend the whole meeting talking about whether the data is good or not, or whether we're missing a piece of data, or hey, Klemen, you didn't get your call in, you didn't get your transcript in, and we're missing that. So now let's get it in now and understand, right? That stuff happens in all of these meetings, and if that's happening, people cannot be proactive, right? It's so hard to be proactive, and usually when there is somebody that is proactive, they're seen as like the sales superhero that doesn't care about whatever else the team is doing, and he's just gonna, like, he or she's gonna do their job, like, because they know they need to get it done. And that's when data also doesn't make it into the system, right? And it just furthers this problem. So I think that's a good point. Like the fact that we've been tackling or trying to tackle alignment for years and not doing that is trying to handle all of these symptoms, right? So I'd love to get into some of these efficiency gains and get your thoughts.
I would love to get into this as well. Faster time to context, reduced.
So we have a faster time to context. And I think like we're moving into the world, if we're not already there, where the right context equals the right value, right? And the wrong context almost certainly equals the wrong like value. So team members spend less time searching for customer information, what to look for, fewer who handled this questions in Slack email, shorter prep time before customer calls, and reduced tab switching and system hopping. Measure by surveying team on time spent finding customer info before versus after. So I think these three examples, one of them is measurable. Shorter prep time before customer calls is probably a little bit measurable. But the other two, I don't know how you get that unless you're talking to your team.
You shouldn't talk to your team. You should talk to your team's gut, because gut feeling will tell you.
Yeah.
But to that point, I just had a chat yesterday with a lady. She joined the team. The previous HubSpot admin left a while ago. She is now on the customer service part of the company, responsible for QuickBooks, for HR and whatnot. And then she's starting to feel that, hey, there's a RevOps function out there, which might be super useful for our system and our team. And she was asking, how RevOps should use HubSpot and how to look at it. And she said, right now I'm the only one who has access to QuickBooks, which means reps are reaching out to me. Is that invoice already paid? Or is it overdue? Should we reach out? Should we follow up? Should we? And then she's the only one who has access to that information. So, to that full context, if you sync that data, if you have the same customer in your QuickBooks linked to the customer in HubSpot, you can easily sync that data. So there's no back and forth information and questions. You just have that, and sales rep can immediately act on it without any lost time. So yeah, there is definitely the opportunity, but how to measure it, I don't know.
I think like towards the end, we're going to get to like some things that you can do, but it all relates to much more like team intensive conversations, like right away, like about how the system's being used and how they're feeling about it. Right. So then we've got reduced duplicate data entry. Information entered once flows where it's needed automatically. What to look for: less copying between systems and spreadsheets, fewer "this record is out of date" discoveries, and a single source of truth for customer status. And I'll put a caveat on that last one. It's single source of truth for customer status for the user that's looking at it at that moment. Like, if we had our way, they would all be using HubSpot for everything. But when they're not, like if accounting is still in the accounting system, like that's their source of truth, like whether we like it or not. So trying to find a way to avoid single source of truth conversations to where it's this system versus that system is often where, you'll get in trouble because we get walled off and then we have no choice to start doing duplicate data entry, right? Because I'm not allowed in the other system, right? But I need to know that because I'm about to have a customer call and I just called up accounting to figure out what the status was so that now I'm typing it into HubSpot, right? And, there's a pretty good chance I don't type it exactly correctly. And why is this one, why have people accepted so much duplicate data entry, up to now?
I don't think people think there's a better, more reliable way. Full stop.
Yeah. I do think it's as simple as that. The two use cases that immediately come to mind are quote to cash and just the way that these systems do not talk to each other at all. In places like customer name is different in the ERP because that gets billed differently, which means it can't integrate with the customer name that's different in the CRM, as an example. And then event management, event planning. And if it's not a spreadsheet, it's in some other event management or marketing budgeting platform that's never been successfully connected into HubSpot. So it's my favorite part of HubSpot right now. There's a place for all this data. So if you can set the expectation that we should only have to enter data one time, right? Should be a simple win in most HubSpot use cases. And if you can start there, this is one where it might take them a minute to feel it, but there's almost always low-hanging fruit related to, see, this data you're putting in over here, if you move it over here, then it solves all the problems that you're telling me about right now.
Yeah.
Team coordination. For the reasons I just mentioned, smoother handoffs between teams, full context causes great handoffs. What to look for: new customers don't have to repeat their story. I think that's a spot where you could leverage AI to understand transcripts throughout the journey and just see how many times is the story getting repeated. I hadn't really thought about that as a use case until right now.
And this is
support knows about active deals and services, and sales knows about past support issues.
For the first one, at least in my LinkedIn feed, I keep seeing, I had a demo with SDR and then I got another call with AE and I had to repeat the same story again, the same questions. Can we just live in 2026? This is it.
Yeah.
I was just working with a client on the last one, actually. The sales knows about past support issues. They were working on getting more visibility into where the support tickets live from the sales team's perspective, I guess. For that reason, exactly, they they were basically like, we don't want to wind up in these conversations that are like, oh, we didn't know your system's been, you haven't even onboarded yet. And now we're calling you about a renewal, but your onboarding hasn't even been completed or whatever, which happens. And it's embarrassing.
Or you try to reach out to record a case study where they just had 5 tickets complaining about something that is not working.
Yeah, I've got a case study for you. 5 tickets. This very much relates to this next one, cross-functional visibility. Like a lot of the reason handoffs are easier is when teams can see each other's work without asking. Again, comes back to transparency, what to look for. Service team knows when renewals are coming. Sales knows about delivery quality issues. Finance sees customer health context. This measure is interesting. Count cross-team status check requests should decrease. And this is where we're all a little bit more optimistic. At least this can work if everything is done digitally, right? But when you're like calling up other departments to see like status checks, right? Being able to count them. I will say, like, if you can do closed won debriefs and closed loss debriefs effectively and ask questions like this instead of whatever, other questions you might be asking, this will reveal very quickly. And this is why it's so important for me to say that unified customer view is an outcome that can be achieved by HubSpot, but you cannot explain it from a HubSpot perspective of the tool or the platform. And just yesterday, I was on a call and we were talking for a client. We want to integrate with a ticketing system. And the person in charge of integrations, there was a few minutes of confusion on the call because all he knew is about an integration with HubSpot. And so he comes to the call saying, oh, we use HubSpot for marketing. So I don't really know what we're supposed to be talking about. I'm not the marketing guy. I could go get a marketing person. And then we're like, yeah, no, we're doing tickets in HubSpot too. And, it's a minute of clarification. And then he still asks, so which help desk software do you guys use? Right? Literally, the word HubSpot just means, okay, we're only talking about marketing. Like this, if we're only talking about marketing, how could we possibly get to unified customer view? Right? So if you start from unified customer view and don't worry about which system and the how, just decide what it needs to be. And then you figure out, okay, this is how we're going to get the data there and where it's coming from and who's using what system to get it there. Proactive intervention, acting before problems arise. At-risk accounts, caught earlier. Problems identified before customers complain or churn. What to look for: red account health triggers. Red account health triggers outreach before issues escalate. Engagement drops noticed and addressed proactively. Renewal conversations start earlier.
This is the right way to prevent churn.
I guess these are just too obvious to even need explanation.
Yeah.
Well, I am starting to think through when we talk about unified customer view, is this might be a customer health score, but a lot of this is has to be powered by documentation in some way. Great if, to your earlier point, we would love for everyone to have HubSpot for everything. If they have tickets in HubSpot, sure, this is a little more native. If they don't have tickets in HubSpot, if they don't have tickets, period, then I think all of that to say, the entire team has to be kind of bought in and committed to this for this to work well. I just think about like my business, like my little baby business. I don't use tickets. Most of the time I am all the things. So I am the person who would report the ticket, but I do have an assistant that I work with. If she had a problem with a client, there's really no way for her to tell me about that other than like telling me with words. So I just think about like if I'm scaling that into a way that the unified customer view, I would need those pieces to be documented in some way that I can reference them. I don't know if it's just like sometimes I think inside HubSpot, there are pieces that people know should exist in HubSpot, but I also think are pieces like oftentimes health triggers that people just don't think to put in HubSpot right now. So I just calling that out.
And one of those reasons might be they think it has to relate to tickets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this takes me back to our conversation yesterday on value first scoring, where like account health and relationship health like relates way more to engagement we are or are not seeing than it does how most people document it. And that's where like if calls and transcripts and everything are coming into the system, it doesn't matter how the data, it matters less about the data structure and more about can we see it? Like, is it even visible for us or AI? And I wonder if this might resonate or just speak to the challenge of email in HubSpot. Like traditionally, gray mail is to support deliverability, right? Like understanding how many emails have you gotten without opening. Okay, it gets to this many, we're not going to send them to you anymore. Instead of, as we get into full life cycle HubSpot emailing, if you're a customer and you stop opening stuff, we're not removing you from the list. We're going to keep spamming the emails, but we need you to open the emails. Like there's something in the emails that's important for you to, if you're going to renew, if you're going to have success, like with the product, right? So are we triggering our teams to say, hey, 5 emails in a row, and somebody checked a box somewhere that said, you're going to get emails that are important to consume, and this is why, like onboardings, right? Stuff like that. But then you stop, like that is a way to, if we just see that, and then we have the mindset of that could mean it's at risk, right? And if that does mean at risk, what are we doing to proactively prevent, churn? I think as we get all these signals inside of HubSpot, these kinds of like designations are super important, and it's really hard to do them when they're all outside of a unified customer view, because you don't have the context. No team has the context needed until it's time to do the monthly report, or until it's time to look at renewals and see like, oh, yeah, this person hasn't been interacting with us at all for 10 months, and now we're surprised that they're not going to renew, right? Similarly, expansion opportunities spotted. God, there's so much opportunity in every HubSpot portal to tackle this, right? Upsell, cross-sell signals visible to the right people, right? And I've seen this on both sides of like, so what to look for: high engagement contact surface to sales, service delivery success leads to expansion conversations, advocate contacts identified for referrals. We were talking about that yesterday in terms of scoring relationship health. But like the amount of signals sales and service collectively miss to create more value in the moment because they're not responsible for it or whatever, like it's all over the place. Yet these teams will often purchase HubSpot for the purpose of growing revenue across the system, and we're not putting our people in a place to like even understand the context needed to do it.
To your point, Casey, a conversation I had a few months ago comes to my mind with a guy where he was asking us, can you design an AI process which is monitoring call transcripts and all the emails going back and forth between anyone in our team and our customers to listen for any features, cases to support through our system, which might indicate, hey, this is part of our pro plan. It doesn't need to be a ticket. Or if there are no back and forth emails, if you're a service partner for them, if there is no active communication, this is a clear indication it's a risk, even though there are no tickets. Or if you have regular calls, just monitor for the sentiment, and those calls can be a good indicator how someone feels about your business and the relationship. And if you have that context, AI can now really help with just monitoring and understanding that, and then a quick summary can be then used to put more or deduct score.
Yeah, hard for me not to, look at this in the scoring context, which, whether this was on purpose or by accident, Chris, like I think scores fit into the view in a way that is really interesting to me. One thing I find whenever I build scores, though, is, and this is, I think, the whole point of the unified customer view. Sure, I can see the number. I can see that the engagement for this contact is 100. That is good from like a ranking and prioritization standpoint. That is useless from a like understanding standpoint. So what I think is really important is kind of that you're not just building a score, you're not just showing someone 100, you're showing, hey, they have high engagement and this is what they engaged with, and this is what they currently own, or whatever the case may be.
I think I just came up with a brilliant idea. Imagine if the score was like at the top of the unified customer view, looking at the view, right? Which could probably be AI or Breeze Assistant saying, hey, look at this customer view. And this is where the sentiment analysis score, the health score, works very similarly to this, if not identical. I'm not sure all of what it can see, but that's really what we need to be scoring. Like, is this a healthy relationship no matter where they are in the process, whether they're leads or customers or wherever? Partners could be valuable, right? Are they a human relationship that we care about? If yes, and we want a quick snapshot, right? That's what scores are supposed to do. Now we could say, like, we could score the view itself, right? Which is really what the humans are doing when they're calling different departments and understanding, like, okay, I see an 80 over here, but I see 5 tickets too. Like, something's not adding up. I'm certainly not going to walk into a hornet's nest. It's a very common retort from a sales account manager. and wanting to call support to make sure nothing's happened as they go and talk to them about expansion and upsell and cross-sell, right? That's the last look they want to have, right? So maybe there's a unified customer score coming. I don't know. And again, we get to these last three of quality improvement, better customer conversations, data-driven decisions, improved data hygiene. It's so hard to like separate these out. I think they all feed each other, but I think the main thing to highlight is like similar to how when I get access to my data in Amazon, and it's important to me that I'm going to get the thing that I bought. I'm the one updating my own data, right? With these unified views, when you put these things right next to each other, like all of a sudden the team who you were begging to clean the data, or you were incentivizing and trying to create all these situations where, oh, please, if you just do this, then it'll help me do that. Like now it just looks out of place and it doesn't work. So people just, they want to maintain the data. Like they want to fix it because they're clear on how it all fits together. And I mean, the most common place that I've, fixed data is when I'm about to share a link to a record to somebody else. And I need to make sure they're not going to get confused or they're not going to, have a misunderstanding. I want them to be excited about what I'm sharing. But if they see this thing out of place, that's all they're going to focus on, right? When you get buy-in, and what you mentioned earlier, Casey, is like really hard to do this unless everybody's aligned. That's how we started, the series.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of impact where people want, when you have the buy-in, people like appreciate and can be proud of what this view looks like. And that leads to them participating in the process of maintaining data instead of pointing to RevOps and saying, make sure it's always right all the time. So when to expect results. And so something we've started doing is saying like one of the first quick wins that we can have in any relationship is a documented unified customer view. Doesn't mean it's 100% accurate. It means it's documented and we understand whether it's 10% complete or 80% complete. And we understand the difference between 100% wherever we are, right? So I don't think, or I'd love to hear your guys' understanding of this timeline, but initial adoption, week 1 and 2, team starts using views and seeing unified context, some friction as habits change. Efficiency gains, week 3 and 4, time to context improves noticeably. Fewer where is this questions. Number 3, coordination improvement in month 2. Cross-team handoffs are smoother. Notifications are driving proactive action. Or I'd say maybe you have a lot less notifications because people are just using the view. And then full multiplication. Indicators are visible and team can't imagine working without unified view.
Strong shoes to fill up that one.
What do you think, Klemen?
Gathering my thoughts. I think as a ballpark, it's achievable as described?
This is also why I don't like timelines. Like, how many people are involved here is very important to whether or not this timeline can be achieved. But I think these stages, like these milestones, are dead on. Like,
Yeah.
right? And this is where if we've spent a month before documenting unified view, bringing the right people in, which is everybody who's going to be impacted by the unified view, not just a couple people here and there, giving them a voice, giving them advance warning that this is where we're going. You've got a leader saying unified customer view is important to the organization, right? So change is coming. We need everybody on board. All these things come together. You have to have teams starting to use them so that they can even understand any of the efficiency gains. And efficiency gains doesn't mean less manual effort out of the gate. It's very likely to not be less manual effort. But something I was showing last night is when you have like the intelligence tab on a CRM record, and you can link right to the person's LinkedIn profile, and then you put some properties right next to that spot on the record that traditionally are like, do I really have to, fill out this source field every time, right? But when you put it right next to the action that they're taking right inside of the workflow, inside of the human workflow, like all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it's just a couple seconds. Like, I'm going to check that box after I send this connection request, right? Then they'll see like more data will happen in the system, and it won't feel like more effort, right? As data starts to fill out, cross-team trust like happens, which I think at the end of the day is what makes handoffs smoother, because we don't have to call each other, we don't question each other about the data, right? And that's when you start to melt away all these obstacles that have traditionally gotten in the way. And teams naturally have insight and new ideas for how they start to use the system and the data and work together to serve, customers. So.
And my mind right now goes to identifying the low-hanging fruits for automating data gathering, standardization, so that you can get to quick wins for the end user, the consumer of the unified customer view, so they don't get impatient of, hey, we're now, for a month talking and designing stuff in the documents. The sooner the better. You understand. I mean, it's a process to map out the unified customer view and say, okay, this is the 100%. We are here. But the sooner you can start bridging that gap in even before you know what's 100%, if you know somewhat where you want to go, these are the quick wins down the road. It will help you engage and keep engaged everyone that you want and need to, before they just get lost in day-to-day work.
Yeah. Can you scroll down real quick for me? This is what we've been talking about. And I think like it can definitely happen faster than a month, but it's related to how fast can you get everybody in the room, in a room, talking about what they need. And an example is I'm doing a workshop with a CFO, CEO, a sales leader, marketing leader, delivery leader on company naming conventions, right? and using that as a way to start creating alignment, because they all care very dearly about what things are named in terms of who's the account that I need to be going after or serving in this moment. And when you have an accounting system separate from an ERP, separate from a help desk, separate from marketing automation, separate from CRM, those people decide in those moments what the account name needs to be. And if you can't like bring everybody together to even agree, and maybe it does have to transform because of the customer's billing needs or whatever, but we can understand that and agree to that and not think it's because of like our own like systems and dysfunction and all this stuff, right? And when you can do that inside of the first month, right, a lot of this other stuff starts to get easier, so that we can bring people into the conversation.
Yeah.
So next week, we're going to be talking about common pitfalls that might prevent you. If you can scroll down a little bit more, Klemen, and click on that button. All right, common pitfalls that are going to get in the way of a unified customer view. Any final thoughts as we wrap up ahead of next week?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be another interesting discussion.
All righty. Well, I hope you can join us for part 6 next week. Until then, everybody have a great week.